This is the Insero session. We're going to talk about AgPilotX, our guidance system. We're just going to go through, talk about a handful of things. One thing that I'm going to touch on is I'll get through the Insero piece and just talk a little bit about who we are, what we've been up to the last few years. And we're going to get into talk about some of the hardware. You'll see up here the components, just 3 components: the iPad, the light bar, and the hub. And we'll talk about that in a bit of detail. And we'll start talking about some of the software that we're doing, our app. Anthony will go through the app and just gonna walk through it and show you guys how it works, some of the details, some of the new things that we've got in it. And we want to take some moments as we go. We've got a couple other people up here that we work with, some partners of ours, and we want to be sure that we talk through some of the things that we're doing, because one of the very important things that we do is we build the AgPilotX system, is we integrate with partners. And we can't do it all, and we don't want to do it all. We want to specialize in the things that we do well, and we want to let other people that do things well do what they do and work with them. And that helps us accelerate the product and build a better product and use the expertise that our partners have. So we'll touch on some of the things that we've been up to this past year, these past few years, and give these guys a chance to talk about some of the collaboration that we're doing. Just about Insero. So Insero's been around for about 6 years now. We really started 6 years ago, and it really spawned from other GPS companies. A handful of us, of course, were from the Satlock side. There were a few people from the Del Norte side, and we really built the company to be to design systems that were more technologically forward. And so a couple things we really wanted to get behind was wireless products, and we wanted to get behind Apple-based products and modularity. You'll hear me talk a little bit about that when I talk about, and it runs in ground areas up in California, the Pacific Northwest is really where we focus that product on. And then a few years later, after we built the wireless and figured out a lot of things about wireless, because there are not a lot of wireless Apple-based products on the market, we started AgPilotX. And you might see other companies that have apps and they have things that communicate with their product. Well, we're one of the only companies that is completely focused around app-based functionality. So our entire system is driven through an Apple-based product. And we do get questions where people say, well, can I use my own iPad? Can I use my own iPhone? The answer is yes, of course. Our product works with any Apple product. There are some limitations as you go back with some of the older models, but they will work just fine. We provide all our systems with iPad Pros, just because they're top of the line, and we like that processing power, especially for what we're doing. But it doesn't mean that other systems won't work. You can use the phone in your pocket. It will connect to the light bar and drive the light bar just like any other system. So we'll talk a little bit more about that when we go. Our app is free. It can be downloaded from the App Store. If you've got a phone, you can download our app and have it on. And incidentally, if you guys wanted to connect to the light bar, you can do that too. So if you want to see your phone connect to it, very simple. Just come to our booth, get your phone out, download the app, you'll connect to the light bar. We'll kind of show you that whole process. Very simple, easy, and really the way of things to come. So just talking a little bit more about our components. The system that we build is very modular, and the reason we make it modular is really about longevity of the system. So you'll hear us talk about the 3 components of the light bar, or of the system: the light bar, the hub, and the iPad. And each one of those is what we call a smart device, so it has its own computer, and it's standalone. So, the light bar, for instance, the light bar doesn't care if there's an iPad or a hub attached to it. It's going to run and do its job no matter what. It runs the GPS, the antenna's on it, the GPS is inside it, the logger's in it. Technically, it doesn't need anything else. You don't need anything else to run. The light bar is going to do everything. It gives you guidance, everything that you need to fly and get guidance. Now, the hub is the second component, and that's just a little small device you see here. This is really for our switches, and here you can see it's just simple box. It's for the switches, and it runs flow control as well. So instead of having a separate flow controller, you can plug the meter and the valve directly into that box. You just run those wires straight up, and they go straight in the back of the hub. So it makes it for a very simple, easy, and clean installation. It's very downsized. Of course, the third piece of that is the iPad, or any Apple device, and that communicates, of course, wirelessly. Incidentally, two different kinds of wireless. We use a Wi-Fi chip in the hub and a light bar to communicate with each other, and then we use Bluetooth to communicate with the iPad and the light bar. So when you hear us talk about Wi-Fi, it's not the traditional sense of Wi-Fi that you know that carries the internet. It's just a wireless chip. There's a chip on each side. They're communicating wirelessly to each other. And really, the reason you use Wi-Fi to move internet data is because Wi-Fi is great at moving lots of data. And so it's a good communication tool to go back and forth. Once it's locked on, they're communicating with each other. Then, of course, the Apple device is communicating through Bluetooth wirelessly to the light bar. And so that's just point-to-point communication. And again, they're all standalone. The app is going to run whether it sees the light bar or hub or not, and the light bar is going to run whether it sees the Apple device or the hub. It's independent. And the biggest thing about that modularity and the biggest advantage of that modularity is that it means if you have an AgPilotX system, you're never going to really have a system cost again. There'll never be something called the AgPilotX 2. There'll never be a new system where you throw out your old system and you get a new one. Because they're modular, if we have a new hub or we redesign the hub, you just plug it into the light bar and it's communicating with the iPad and the light bar. If you want to get a new iPad, you go to Walmart and get a new iPad. If you want to update the light bar or get some updates or upgrade the light bar, then you just focus on the light bar. A new light bar is going to communicate with that hub and that iPad. So there's really no such thing as a capital expenditure on a new system. You don't have to deal with that ever again because the system's modular. You're just dealing with those components. It's always those three components. They really do everything that you need for a guidance system and a rate control system and tying into peripherals. We'll talk about all that. And it's just that simple. And then, of course, the iPad we'll talk about is the mechanism to which we can connect to the cloud as well. You don't have to connect to the cloud. All the iPads that we provide have the capability to get cell coverage and get data, but you don't have to have that. If you're not connected to the cloud, it's not going to affect the performance of the system. The only thing that it won't do is it won't get background maps because background maps are taken from the cloud. So you don't necessarily have to be connected, but it makes for a much better experience, of course. And we'll talk about other things that we're doing with other third parties. Some things you can, of course, use FloorFlight and other things. And if you wanted to use ADSB, you could have that with FloorFlight running on the iPad. We'll talk a little bit about those things. We'll touch on all this, and we'll get into some of the logging software, which is called AgHippo. So that's our cloud-based data. So if you want to view our data or you want to relay the data to the cloud, you can go into our website, AgHippo.com, and anybody that's familiar with like MapStar for SatLog, it's very similar to that. It's just in the cloud, so you can just log into it anywhere, upload a log and view it. And that's also the site where we do our real-time tracking, so we'll talk about that. So you can pass all your data to the cloud instantaneously as you go, if you so choose. And so that way you don't have to worry about, at the end of the day, downloading logs or getting logs back to a location or through an email. You can just deal with those, push them to the cloud automatically, have them there so you can see them anytime you want. And that site's ours. We own AgPilotX, and the data that's on it is the customers. Whatever the customer chooses to do with that data, if you delete the data, it's gone. But if if that's what you want your data to be stored, if that's the place, that's the location you store it. You can store it there. Now, one more thing about the light bar is the light bar does hold all your data, we don't do anything to delete the data off the light bar. So there's of course memory in the light bar that could last you. If you worked 8 hours a day, every day of the year, it would fill up in about 20 years. So it's not something that you need to worry about getting data off of. It's not something that you need to worry about data collecting. It doesn't affect the performance at all. It's just a passive site where all the data is. And we don't do anything to delete any of that data, so it's always there and secure for everything that you've ever done. So at the end of the day, if you want that data or you want it backed up, that's the place it's backed up. It's all there. And we'll talk a little bit more about moving that data to your iPad, and we'll talk more about the AgPilotX side of things. We'll just talking about the hardware, a little bit more detail on the hardware. What you see is what you get. This is everything. So we've had some people say the best thing about our system is that it takes longer to rip out the old system than it does to put in the new system, because it's just the components are small. It's very downsized, very easy to install. The antennas are part of the light bar. It's very quick and easy. But with the light bar, the GPS is on board inside, internal to the light bar. So our GPS engine that we use is really a GNSS engine. So you probably hear that term, GNSS. What is GNSS? GPS is a GNSS system. GNSS is the more generic term. So Russia, for instance, has the GLONASS system. Or you may have heard the European system, Galileo. So GPS, Galileo, and GLONASS, they're all forms of GNSS. So the more appropriate term is GNSS, not GPS, because a GNSS system has additional satellites, additional networks. For instance, on our system, we use both GPS and GLONASS. So what does that mean to you? What does it mean to pilots? It just means you double your number of satellites. So where GPS had traditionally been working from 24 satellites that rotated around the Earth in 12-hour orbits, GLONASS is very similar. So now we just added all those satellites. So now, at any given time, if you're standing here with a GPS receiver that only gets GPS, it doesn't pick up GLONASS, it doesn't have a GNSS receiver, you might be looking at 6, 7, 8 satellites, 9 satellites, 10 satellites on a really good day. And that's what you're going to get. And that gives you a good position. So that position, being loss corrected or differential corrected, is going to get you about. We use the GLONASS, just means you got more satellites now. We'll be looking at 13, 14, 15, 16 satellites. So again, what does that translate? That just means when you're flying or when you're using it, the likelihood of you losing satellites or having a jumpy system that causes the light bar to jump out and jump back because you're losing satellites, the likelihood of that happening is very small because you're just looking at so many more satellites. So anyone that's had a history of flying and they bank at a turn, and you come back and you notice the light bar jump out, that's because your satellite configuration is not optimal. You're looking at, you're probably down to 6 satellites and you're blocking 1 or 2 out when you turn, and it causes a jump in position and it comes back. So running a GNSS system that runs both GPS and GLONASS just means less likelihood of jumping. It just means more stable, more accurate. You're talking about 1.5 foot accuracy, and that's your long-term accuracy. It means like a second a GNSS is talking about foot mark position back tomorrow or next week, next month, or next year, I'm going to be within a foot and a half of that position. So that's when we talk about that. That's really what we're talking about. We have several versions of the light bar. We have the standard light bar, our fixed wing light bar, and we have a helicopter light bar that's downsized. We've got some pictures of that. We have a helicopter system here that you guys can see in our booth. And we also have night version options. This is the helicopter light bar. And so it's really very similar to our fixed wing, except it's just chopped in half. So you only have 2 displays instead of 4 displays. And it's in a different enclosure, of course, a lightweight enclosure. And if you were to look inside this box, you can see it's got a flat board. We just turn that board up on its side, and it goes right behind the LEDs. So it just makes it for a very small and tight helicopter. And we do have night vision versions of this. I know we don't have anything with us, but we do have a picture of it up on one of the displays downstairs. But they're just all unicolor LEDs, and we do have options in both the helicopter option, the fixed wing option for night visions for night vision goggles. Any questions or comments? Or I encourage you guys to ask questions where you see fit. We'll have a question section at the end, but if you guys have any thoughts or any concerns or any questions, feel free to speak up, speak out. That's one thing we get out of this is, this is a great time for us to interact with you guys and get your feedback. So I encourage you guys to speak out. And this is one development that we put into place here in the last, about a year and a half ago, is the antenna guard, because one quality issue that we had early on was we were seeing a lot of cracked antennas. And those antennas being on the front part of the light bar, we were seeing hairline cracks. And then, of course, it gives exposure to the internal components to water ingress, right? Because if enough water builds on that, it'll get inside that light bar. And so we had issues with the light bars cracking. And so we did work with the manufacturer to find out why these things are cracking. And they really looked at it and said, it's being bombarded by tiny particles, for a long time. Eventually it cracks. And we always noticed that those cracks were coming on the leading edge of the light bar. So we have put a guard in place. We haven't had one unit fail with this guard. We haven't had one crack. We haven't had one system with water ingress. So it's been a great fix for us. We do have versions of that GPS antenna guard that can go on to existing light bars. So you can get one, you can push it right down in place, right over the existing antenna, and it'll snap right into place. So if you guys do have an AgPilotX and you want to get that guard, I encourage you to get it. Our dealers have them, we have them, so feel free to reach out to us to get an antenna guard. Any questions or comments on that?
You said your antenna is on the light bar. Is that the only antenna for the system is on the light bar itself?
You can run an optional separate antenna. In fact, our helicopter are all remote antennas, and we have done installations where we have remoted the antenna. We've done some AgCats where the light bar was a bit too far under the wing, and it just didn't. Yeah. So we've installed AgCats where it works fine with that light bar there, but I mean it's hit or miss.
Up under the wing.
Right, it's just placement, right? So when you're putting those when you're putting that light bar on, looking at that placement, if you're blocking the sky too much, you're going to want to run a remote antenna. So we can do that, no problem. We've done that. We've actually, I hesitate to say this because I don't want too many people asking for it, but we flipped the light bar upside down so it could be mounted top down, and you could see it visually, and ran a remote antenna as well. So no problem to run a remote antenna. And in fact, and that's one thing,
this is a high quality antenna, and a high quality DGPS antenna is pricey. I say pricey. It's not as cheap as just a patch antenna that you get GPS, what your phone would have for GPS, and that's part of the of the equation of a high precision GPS system. A 1.5 foot accuracy is a really good antenna. So you need a really good antenna, but any antenna. So if you had an existing antenna, you could use that. Like if you had a sat-lock system with with the cone antennas and those different antennas that they did, you can plug that in. A DGPS antenna is a DGPS antenna, so you could plug that into to a system as well. A couple other things about the light bar that we've changed. We also noticed we had some water ingress with the old style vent that we used, because the vent was on it was a protruding vent that was underneath the light bar. And we did notice there were situations where water would sit there and create issues. So we changed that vent. We actually now have the vent internal to the light bar. So if you flip it upside down, you just see a tiny hole. And then the vent is actually on the inside. And what that does is, through years and years of creating light bars, we realized you need to have that for the pressure release. So it constantly runs at it's constantly getting that pressure release, and you're not having pressure differences, which causes moisture to get inside the light bar. So that's another change that we've made. And there's no protruding. So how you know if you got it? Just look at the bottom of the light bar. If it's just that tiny hole, it's internal to it. And we can make that change to any existing light bar as well. And Bluetooth 5.0, so I just mentioned that because anybody that's familiar with Bluetooth, Bluetooth 5.0 is a new standard they put out and released, a year and a half ago? Probably about a year and a half, 2 years ago. Yeah, about 2 years ago. And that was, of course, Bluetooth 4. The issues with Bluetooth 4 is, I talked a little bit about wireless. Wi-Fi chips are great at moving large amounts of data, like the internet, right? So it's great at doing that. But Bluetooth is great for streaming data, but it's terrible at moving large amounts of data, like a log, like picking up a log and moving it from one place to the other. So we use the Wi-Fi chip to do that, to pick up a log and move it over instantaneously. We use Bluetooth to stream the GPS data to come across to the app. So when you're looking at it, that data is streaming across. 5.0 is just a new version of Bluetooth that actually is much better at heavy lifting for doing larger logs. So that's one thing that we're now getting into, and with our systems that are out there. The new iPad Pros for about the last 2 years have had Bluetooth 5.0. The light bars now have Bluetooth 5.0 in them. And it just means we can start moving larger segments of data. So what we're going to really do is move away from any Wi-Fi data movement altogether and just do all Bluetooth data movement. What does that mean to you? It just means on an iPad, to connect to the Wi-Fi chip, Apple makes us jump through hoops, right? They want to say, wait, what's communicating here? We need the user to authorize it. And so it's just a step that makes you kind of walk through, okay, I'm going to make the connection, now give me the log. And it's just a busy process. And with Bluetooth, everything can happen in the background. It doesn't need to be authorized. It's just, it's just bringing the data across. So the reason we like Bluetooth 5.0 is because it really lets us get to a place where we can be streaming that log across to your iPad. So now the logs exist on the light bar, and now they can simultaneously exist the whole log on the iPad. So that means at the end of the day, I can walk away with my iPad. I've got all the logs there. I can take it inside. I can do whatever I want. I've got the logs right with me on my phone or on my iPad instantaneously. And it's just easier, right? Just one less step. I don't need to download a log from the light bar. It's just there. It's always at that iPad. I can take that iPad with me and do what I want. And anybody that's run a system, that's the other nice thing is on the iPad itself, you can see all your data that you did, right? So all my visual spray lines are there. So at the end of the day, I can take that in. I can look at everything I did. I can click on each job. I don't need to be connected to the system. I can be away from the job and see everything just on that iPad or that Apple device. And so that's really been a move that we made here a couple years ago, is to go to the newer technologies. And again, this is all part of that modularity. So, we've already had 3 or 4 versions of light bar. We've already had 3 or 4 versions of hub. We're constantly making updates. And with technology, that's something you just got to do. It's like an iPad or an iPhone. They're slightly being changed. Can you still use the old one? Of course. But we got to constantly make changes and updates and to take advantage of new technologies. To take advantage of new technology like Bluetooth 5.0. We got to constantly make those tweaks. And of course, we've had our challenges with the supply issues, right? I mean, we have problems getting certain chips, and we've had to make changes there. And and we'll talk a little bit about the hub and the charging circuit for the iPad and things like that. We're constantly making changes to the system that you're never even going to be aware of. There's just going to be a constant change, and it'll always be AgPilotX. There'll never be another version, and there'll just be later versions of a very similar product. Talking a little bit more about the hub. So really what the hub, the function of the hub is really to serve as the switches. So my spray switch, my swath advance, my swath decrement, and it also serves as the flow controller. So my meter and my valve just plug directly into this. We always get a lot of questions. People say, well, I've got a controller, can I use that? No, you don't need it. You don't need a controller at all. If you got a meter and valve, you can plug those directly into the hub. And we can use any meter and valve. We're not limited to you can use a turbine meter, you can use an electromagnetic meter, you can use any type of meter, and we can use any valve. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to some of the software and some of the changes that we've made and some of the things that we do with what we call aggressiveness, which is how fast we move that valve. Because we use any valve, we got to have a lot more options and a lot more flexibility to move that valve. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about software. The charging circuit in the hub that was another update that we made recently. With Apple, Apple's constantly changing things, and a few years back, Apple changed their charging capabilities to only work with intelligent charging devices. So intelligent charging devices, what is that? It just means if it's overheating, it wants less draw from less power coming to it, right? So it doesn't overheat, and so it wants an intelligent circuit to communicate with, and so they're constantly doing things to update that. Now the problem is when we built the first hub, we had a very dumb charging circuit in there. It was just charging it, but it worked. So it just said, well, it's charging it. Their more intelligent devices look at those dumb devices and say, no, I'm not using that. That's a dumb device. We require that there's an intelligent charging circuit communicating with us so we can change how we charge. And so that required us, and Apple's not very good at saying, hey, we're going to do this 6 months from now. Here's the lead time. Now they come out with it and say, we did it, deal with it. And so there's good things about Apple, and there's things that make it challenging because we got to constantly jump through hoops with them. But it's worth it. It's worth it for all the benefits of an Apple product. So we did change that circuit internally now. It does properly charge it. We do have the old hubs where you can hang a charger on the outside of it that'll work just like a charger you would use in your car or anything like that. So you can still put that on the back of the hub, but really, where we want to go, of course, is with the new hub that's got the charging circuit internal to it, so you don't have to hang a charger on the outside of it. It's all done internally. And a couple other things that we did with the hub is it now has better circuit protection. We did notice where we were plugging third-party devices in, or not even third-party devices, if people put the valve or put power in the wrong place, we could burn up a hub because if we get the connectors on the back of the hub are just live wires, so we'd get a lot of damage done to hubs because people would plug the wrong wires in because it's easy to do that. And so we put additional protection that protects us against somebody hooking up the wrong wires to the wrong places. And And also, with that new hub, you'll notice that bottom picture, we've got an additional connector on it where we bring in additional serial ports. So one thing that the hub, the purpose that it serves is third-party devices. So we can plug in things like AgLaser, we can plug in things like the Reby Gate. And so those third-party devices can communicate with our hub, and we do both serial connections and CAN connections. CAN connections is a type of connection. If you haven't heard of it, you'll hear more of it, more about it. It's just where a serial port is really one-to-one, right? So if I got an AgLaser and an AutoCal, I need two serial ports because I got to connect to two different things. CAN lets me connect to one, and I can split them up because it can multitask. So I can plug two devices in through one connector, and it just divvies up those signals as they come through. So really, it's a much better way to communicate, and it's really where we're moving to, and where most people are for connectors is a CAN type of communication. But being where we're at, we've got a lot of devices out there that are serial only. They don't have the capability to be CAN. So we've added a few additional serial ports just so we can run more devices and more third-party devices into our system and bring that data across to our unit. Any questions or comments on that? The hub is a little larger than our old hub. It's a little deeper, so it's about between a 1/2 inch and a 1/4 inch deeper, and so it does require that if you're putting one of these into an old system, that you put a little spacer on the back of it. But it's just because of that charging circuit from Apple, that made us actually make it a little bit bigger. Question or comment?
Yeah, I've got a question. I've got AgLasers in my aircraft.
Okay.
And when I set it up, it tells the distance from the wing to the ground. And you can go into the light pad and put it at 0, so when the tire's on the ground, it says 0. But on the light bar, it still says 5 feet.
Yeah.
Is that another thing that's in the works?
Yes, that's in the works, and that's a good example of what I was talking about, the modularity. So we can tell the iPad that it's changed, but now, and that's done, so you can, on the iPad, you can see it properly. But the light bar, because it's a separate system, we actually have to bring that information across to the light bar and tell it that it's changed. So I can see it properly on my iPad right now, can't see it on the light bar. We're making that change so that data comes across from the iPad, tells the light bar, so it also shows the correct value.
The pilots and myself were able to add 5 to it, so we can fly it.
Right. Yeah, and we will have that change. That's one thing that's on the short to-do list to get that checked off, so the light bar reflects the proper value. Any other questions or comments? And another, and I think we've got this later on to talk about like no hub. We do get messages across the light bar that say no hub, and we do get a lot of questions about that, where people say, what does that mean? Is that a wireless issue? It's not really a wireless issue. It's just a communication problem. We did build into the AgPilotX system the ability to hardwire it. And so you can hardwire it. You don't have to be wireless. You don't have to use the Wi-Fi chip. And how we know, the situation of a no hub, which I'll talk about in more detail, has nothing to do with wireless, is because when we hardwire it, it still comes up and says no hub on occasion. It's a communication issue where the light bar is just reading data coming across from the hub. And so when it gets a bad piece of data or a piece of data it doesn't like, it just says, I'm having poor communication with the hub. So it doesn't affect your guidance. It doesn't affect anything because all your guidance is in your light bar. Doesn't mean it won't work. It just means it got a bad piece of data from the hub. Now, this used to be a bigger problem. This was one of our biggest problems out of the gate, was getting those no hub messages, and it was just a communication problem. So as this is the first time really we've done a system that's so modular like this. We had a lot to learn. So we minimized those. It's not eliminated. If you run a system, you might see the no hub come up on occasion, but it's very short-lived. Doesn't really affect the performance of the system in any great way. It's not going to affect the GPS, the guidance, anything like that. It's just a piece of data that came across from the hub that was poor, and so that's really what that's about. But it's not a real cause for concern, and it certainly has nothing to do with the wireless. Our wireless communication between those two devices has been perfect. So we have not had any. Well, I shouldn't say that. There has been some issues. We have seen some Wi-Fi interference from ground stations, but it's very few and far between. I think too many times when we tell people that's why we hesitate to tell people that, because they say, oh, well, I've got that problem. It's very unlikely that you have that problem, because if somebody has a tower or something that's generating noise that is knocking out the Wi-Fi, typically that's illegal and they're doing something illegally. And we have talked to the FCC about it, and they said they will deal with it if we just relay the location and what it is, and we can do that. So realize that's a potential, but very unlikely. But you can. We did have a situation in Canada where it was a problem, and we couldn't really work with anybody to resolve it. So we hardwired the system, and that of course gets rid of the problem, because you're hardwired. You're not using the Wi-Fi chip. You can't jam it. So we do have avenues around that. And incidentally, that's why we put that connector on top to add serial ports, because when we do hardwire it, we steal serial connectors. And so now we can't run an ag laser. So with this connector, of course, now we can run an ag laser or a Reeve gate or any third-party device. Any other comments or questions on that? The additional functions of the hub. There's the dimmer control is on it. The charging port is in the back. You'll see the new style charging connector there in the lower right-hand corner. There is a front USB. That front USB is it's not for charging. It's just for uploading and downloading. So now we just use it as a device that you can put a USB if you want to download. If you want to hard download logs from the light bar, you can do it that way. We're going to add to that functionality. Actually working on that now to upload jobs through a USB. Believe it or not, we do have some requirements. Of course, we can do it wirelessly, we can do it through emails, but we do have requirements where people have to have a USB stick and have to stick it in and have to pull data back and forth that way. So that's why we have it there.
That was actually my question on the USB was, are you working on a solution if I want to take one field or two fields and download it to a USB?
Yeah, we can do that now.
In the past, you had to have that folder and dump the entire.
No, you put that connector, that cable that's on there. So we can do that now. They make a little adapter that plugs into the side of the iPad that you can put a USB in, and so basically when you transfer it, instead of tapping email, there's a button that says files, and you'll tap that and it'll give you the option to copy just that one job to the USB.
Okay. And you have to be connected to the light bar to do that?
You do have to be connected, yeah.
So you can't download your as applieds from that USB, you need the adapter on the iPad?
No, you can do both. The problem with going.
I never get my USB to download, so I have to email 5 at a time, versus after a long day, you sit there all day.
Yeah, so putting the USB into that, we haven't spent a lot of time on that, because we do want people to use the wireless methods, and we really push that. So it's there are some issues there. Sometimes it does get locked up. You got to take it out. You got to put it back in, because we just haven't invested a lot of time in it, and especially because you can, as Anthony's pointing out, because it dawned on us well, why don't we just tell people to put the USB stick in the iPad, and you can just pull it off that way too, and that way you get more flexibility on how you bring it across. So it's kind of our fault. We didn't really let people know that. Just take the stick, put it directly in the iPad, download that way. That way, you've got the flexibility to do it. It's a better way to do it through the USB there,
So
but you can do both.
When you're uploading, say you go help somebody and they're running all sat lock and they just give you the thumb drive, you can't plug that in there and use that information, or I could never get mine to work.
Yeah, not yet.
Shape files are all.
To upload shape files, you're saying, yeah. So not yet, just because we have, again, with the USB functionality for a shape file, we email it. Now you could do that shape.
Out of 5 airplanes, I'm the only one that's different.
Right. Yep. And that's exactly why we're doing more with it, because so many people said, look, this is the way we do it. This is the way we want to do it. That's why we put that USB port in there. We initially built our ground product, and we refused to put a USB port in there because we said you can just do everything wirelessly. And that was probably the biggest mistake we ever made, right? Because people do have ways they do things, and you got to be a part of that. So we realize that, we know that, and we're adding to that that ability. But yeah, you can, right now you can download logs to a USB stick several different ways. We're working now on that ability to sync, so it brings logs in and pushes shapefiles out to the system. Any other questions or comments on that?
I just want to clarify one thing. Did you say if you had a USB-C, USB drive, that I could plug that directly into the iPad and go to files and download a job from that?
Yep.
way? Cool.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a better way to do it. Yeah, I know. We've done a very poor job of relaying to people that we, of course, you have that capability. So that's a much preferred way to do it than going through there, because then you have the flexibility of what logs you want to download, and it works well. So yeah, that's the way to do it.
USB-C option does not work for shape files in?
No, not yet.
Yeah.
You mean through the
Yeah, you can
iPad?
bring
Yes.
you can bring a shapefile in the same way. You just go to the Files app, click on the shapefile, and then share. Use that share button like you would do through the email. You're just going to do it from the Files app because that's where the email or the USB will show that folder.
So right, yeah, that's directly through the iPad. You can. Through there you can.
Right, yeah.
So yeah, if you plug that in there, yeah, you're just looking at the file structure. You can move files back and forth any way that you want. If you put the USB into that port, it won't do anything to sync them. We are adding that capability to sync the two, right? Bring the logs down, send the jobs back. So sorry for that lack of clarity.
Can you talk a little bit more about the AgPilotX cloud?
Yep. We'll get to that here in a bit. Yep. Yeah. We'll talk about the tracking capability and some more things that we're doing with that this year and releasing. We talked about most of the things on there and everything that feeds through there. And just one thing I didn't mention. Of course, you can plug power in through the hub. You don't have to. The hub's wireless, right? The hub can get power from anywhere, so you don't need to plug it through the hub. There's a place to do that if you want to get power through the hub. You can do that. And we talked about most of these additional changes with the circuit breaker. And that's just an installation where you see the back of the hub. A couple different ways this can be installed. Of course, here you see the iPad mounted on top of the hub. That's not required. We do have a bracket that we supply with the iPads. It doesn't matter how you put it in. You can put it on a RAM mount. The bracket does have the ability to put on a RAM mount if you want to put it somewhere. It can be mounted on top of the hub. You can see on the right-hand side that they're put together, or most people just install the hub somewhere down by the side and just put the bracket up front. Or you can really use lots of different options, right? It's an iPad. So, Sporties has a bunch of different options of how to install it. You can do it 100 different ways. That's the nice thing, is that flexibility and you can, I think we got a couple pictures in here too. We do use iPad minis for certain installations. If room is at a premium, minis are fine. The new mini is a great device to plug in. We did use the big, what is it, the 13-inch? The big 13-inch. We did have some guys that wanted to run the bigger screen. Doesn't matter. You can run whatever you want. So you can run an older Apple product, isn't a problem as well. An Apple Air, Apple, standard iPads, it's all, all the new stuff is good. And, going back, I just tell people, if you're getting into stuff that's like Bluetooth 4, that's just a good way to think about it. If you get into like the Bluetooth 4, it'll still work, but it's, that's kind of older technology. Just use that as your gauge. If it's got Bluetooth 5, that's typically something that's newer and something we prefer. It's got more processing power and heat dissipation and everything.
Do you suggest that you keep your iPad updated to the latest version? I know some or whatever,
Yeah.
product always prefer to keep up with the latest version or?
Yeah. And that's there's a couple different ways to look at that. The question is about versions that are on the iPad. We encourage you to always update your iPad. So, new iOS comes out, different versions. Typically, they're pretty innocuous. You can just update. Now, when we have big version changes, that's one thing we hesitate to move too quickly. Like iOS 15 just came out, And, that's a big change. We went from 14 to 15. So when it goes, 14.2 to 14.3.4, things like that, those are smaller changes. They're pretty harmless. So we encourage you guys, do that, get in the practice of doing that, because everything we test with, of course, is the latest version of iOS. We do some regression testing, but we do little because we just want to tell people, keep updating. And you can set your system up on automatic updates and just keep updating it. iOS 15 recently came out. I don't even know when it came out, a month ago or something like that. 6 weeks ago, maybe.
End of October, I think.
End of October. And so we have vetted that out. It's good to go. So feel free to update that to iOS 15. We encourage you just to update it to the latest and greatest as much as you can. And we didn't talk too much on this. Maybe we got a slide later, and just about the programming of each, right? That's we got a slide coming up on talk about programming, but
software updates.
Yeah, okay, we'll hit it then. And so in just some other things with the new Apple product, some of the new iOS features. It's got some very interesting features in it now, where it can it can read writing, like if you have, or read text. So if you had like and I bring this stuff up because I don't know if it would ever be used for anything, but it's possible, where if you had like a work order or something, or a piece of paper, it can, look at that piece of paper, translate everything to text. So if you had work orders and you wanted to take a picture with your iPad of the work order, it can translate all that and move it up, so you're not worried about writing it down or getting it wrong or entering it at all. You just take a picture, it can bring all that data up, feed it across, and it can do pen writing as well. So you use I think it's called Apple Pen, but you can just, we can use that as well. So if you're using our software and you want to use a pen instead of typing things in, you can do that. It'll translate your writing into text. Just some cool things. And that's the great thing about using an Apple product, right? We get the benefits of all the cool new things they do. And that's going to play out, right? So everything new that they do, we get to take advantage of. We'll talk about things like weather, bringing in weather. We can do things like that because it's available. It's an Apple product. It's got, all kinds of different things we can do that people do for free, and we can bring them across and use them with our product. So it really, enhances the value. Any questions or comments on any of that? And that's just the latest iPad Pro is just a Gen 3. That's the latest one that they released, and of course that's what we supply with our systems. Here was another interesting one, is the share play. So anybody, of course, you get involved in videoing from iPads or iPhones. One good thing that they just came out with is share play. So when you make a FaceTime video, you hit share play so we can see your screen. So there's ways to do that, of course, like through Zoom, but you got to jump through a bunch of hoops. Now a new feature called share play from Apple is just if you want to call from your iPad and you want to contact us and you want us to, or anybody, to see your screen while you're using it, you can do that. You can just hit FaceTime. Hit that little button there on the far right-hand side now. That's on every FaceTime program now. And we can see your screen on our screen, or on our phone, or whatever. So it's just a nice, convenient feature. If you ever, hey, what is this? Or I want, helps in learning. If you want to learn how to use it, we've had guys, a lot of the guys that we have in when we put a system in a foreign country, we say, give us a call when you get it and sit down. We'll kind of walk you through it. It really helps do things like that, right? You can walk through, show people things, and it just makes it for a very good learning tool, and really helps you understand everything that's on the screen. It's just one more tool that they have. Any questions or comments on any of that? So it will break into, if we want to start talking through the app, I'll turn it over to Anthony. He's going to go through the app and just talk about everything that is on the app, how it works, and some of the new things that we've recently done.
Yeah, so I won't get into everything that's in the app right here, but I will talk about some of the new features that we have that we really just started coming out with. And Greg will talk a little bit more about it. Our communication that we're doing now with with AgSync and soon to be with KimMan, where we're sending data back and forth. We spent a lot of time this year in 2021, a lot of engineering time working on that API, which is the link, and Greg will talk a little bit more about that. But having said that, there was, a lot of people, question why we didn't have certain things, certain updates. There were certain features that we promised and hadn't come out with. So I just wanted to mention that we did spend a lot of engineering time on that API, and that's part of the reason that things were a little bit slow. But that's behind us, and we've really been adding features pretty steadily, and we still got a bunch of stuff to add this winter before things get busy. So one thing you'll notice here on the first screen, the jobs are redesigned. We made the names and just those everything in that list a little bit easier to read. It's just a little bit it's more separated now, so you can see that better. Still has the same information, so you got your acres, how many acres you did in that job, the pattern, swath width, how many gallons you did in that job. All that's still listed there. We just made it, separated it, made it a little bit easier to read. And then you'll notice right above that is the search button. So we did add a search button. Works, pretty similar to searching through your email. You just start typing in the name or a number that is in there. So if you had work orders, you can start typing in the first part of that work order, and then anything that matches that will come up on that. That matches it. You can resume it from there. You can transfer it, whatever you want from there. We did a few things along the bottom. We moved the follow button up by the zoom in and zoom out. We had some complaints or concerns that you would go to hit follow and it would you'd accidentally hit finish and then you'd have to go resume it. Just another thing that was that we just needed to do better. So we moved that and got that out of the way. One thing, so what we've people have been asking this for a while, but we finally got the drop. We call it a drop pin or log, a long press on the screen. So what that is if you have your say I want to navigate to this particular field here, and with the imagery, of course you can see real time exactly what field it is. With the real background imagery, you don't have to have the shapefile there. Well, to guide to it, you can hold your finger down now, and it says make strip, which is your waypoint. And so I can tap that. It'll give me the coordinates automatically. I can name it. Put in the radius, all that, and it will actually save that point into your strips button, so you can go back to it later, and it'll be listed in there. So that was a big thing we did this year, or just a few weeks ago, was adding that. So now you get guidance to anywhere you're going. Also, I'll go back to the shapefile. So we added the ability to do auto repeat now. So basically, when you come in and you hit new job, there's a button down here that says repeat, and you just check that. So what the repeat pattern is if you set up a quick track, when you get to your last swath, it's going to automatically duplicate that same swath. So it'll just flip over and do the same thing again. So if you were trying to split up a really long field, things like that, it'll do the auto repeat now. And then we did add Quick Track X, which is we did that before this season, but Quick Track X is there now. And the way you do that, if you want to set your pattern on the shapefile ahead of time, it's the same idea as the drop pin, but it's just we call it a long press. So you just hold your finger down on it. The other option there, as you see, is guide to. So if you had 50 shapefiles up on your screen, instead of what we had previously was the next button. If you've dealt with shapefiles, you know what I'm talking about. You have to hit next, a bunch of times to get to the guidance to the field you want. Now you don't have to do that. You just zoom in to the shapefile that or the actual polygon that you want to go to. Hold your finger on it and hit guide to, and that'll give you guidance. And then the other option is apply pattern. So when I tap that, you can see that it puts this yellow line up there, and I can move that yellow line. So that's the edge that you want to set your AB on. So I can move it around, find the edge that I want, and then I hit that set ABC. If I hit that, then pattern comes up, and like I said, this one's set up for QuickTrack X, so it automatically puts the C there, and then you can start your pattern. We also we're kind of experimenting with this just a little bit. I don't know that it'll stay exactly like this, but we're putting the swath numbers on the actual swaths now, so you can zoom in and see the actual swath. We do want to add a feature there where you can actually just touch the swath and it'll automatically jump to that one. You don't have to hit go to or advance, it'll just go to it. But that's just one of the little options that we're kind of playing with is having those swath numbers on there. The other thing is being able to know what swath was sprayed and what wasn't. So quick reference to say, okay, I got to go back and do past 11, and then you'll see it on there. You can, and then from here you just hit go to swath 11, and then it'll jump your swath line over to it. So
Yeah, well, I'm interested to get maybe your guys' feedback, what you think of that. I mean, because we don't like to make the screen too cluttered, right? And so there's a healthy balance between what's too cluttered and what's nice to have. You like to see the swath up there?
Is there gonna be a way to toggle that off if we don't
yeah,
want to see it?
Yep.
yeah, it is in settings. Yep. Yeah, and we try to keep that pretty constant. So as we're adding these things, you'll see more options come up in the settings because sometimes you want to turn things off, and we may introduce something that you don't really care for. So most times we'll have a setting, the ability to toggle on and off in the settings.
Is there anything on the light bar at a quick glance that you can see if you've already sprayed that swab?
Yeah, so I don't know if you saw the picture that was up there earlier. If it was an actual airplane in flight, and you'll have the L, and then there's a little underscore that's next to it. So it kind of connects to the L, so it looks like a very long L, but that underscore indicates that you've sprayed that swath before.
Is that gonna stay there whenever you resume it?
Yeah, so I was just about to say that we do have a bug right now that they're working on that right now if you finish a job and resume that job, when you come back to it, it loses that memory of what was sprayed. So that is getting fixed as well.
Is there any way you can change the color of that underscore? Sometimes it's hard to see.
Yeah, I think we just need to take one LED out, so it'll have a little space there. It doesn't have to necessarily be that long. So yeah, that'll once he gets that fixed, that'll be part of that fix. We'll do that.
Can some of those commands be done by voice, so you don't have to fiddle with the screen?
Yeah, so that's another thing that we're talking about. So there are certain commands that you can do through the iPad, through Siri on the iPad, and
Setting that swath number.
yeah, set swath number, start new job, things like that. We haven't done much testing with it. Honestly, we just haven't got a lot of feedback on it. But if that's something that you guys would be interested in, let us know, because we can do stuff like that. We just need to know that that's the direction that people are going to use it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a really good one, because that's using the power of the iPad, right? So that is very easy to do. So if we thought you want to start doing voice commands through Siri, that's it does it already, right? So very easy to implement that.
And then kind of the last thing I had here for new features is it's not on this version yet, but it will be on our next release. But it's we call it bump. It's your target rate, so it'll be on the screen down at the bottom, where you can just tap plus or minus. So if you want to bump your target rate up or down and it'll move by a tenth. So you can just really quickly, hit that button on the screen, and it'll bump your target rate up or down quickly without having to go into the settings and set it up. So, any questions on the app while I'm up here?
Yeah, on the drop down where the resume is, it has resume and it has delete.
Mm-hmm.
You guys fix that, so I went to hit resume when I was taxiing,
And it,
hit delete.
yeah.
There's no like, you really want to do this?
Yeah. Yeah.
Too late, it's already gone.
Yeah, that's I brought that up several times. That is on our short list to add that in there. We actually moved some of the buttons on the top because when you hit edit, the delete button was right next to it, so next to the share button. So you might accidentally hit delete instead of. So yeah, it's just one of those things. We're just moving buttons around, but and adding that. Are you sure? Basically,
That
is what
was
it'll
really
say.
a double-edged sword for us because we hate the, inundates you with button pushes, right? So we're like, do we put a button push here or not? Because,
Delete is so fun.
yeah.
But you gotta have it. That's the one thing I don't mind putting that.
Another thing you'll notice, there's a lot more options now when you hold your finger on it. The to-do list is something that we added this past season that we had. It's actually on the new release, so if you have the newest app, you have that. And what the to-do list is it just gives you an easy way to separate your jobs from that you're actually working on that day or in the short time versus all the jobs on your screen. So if I start my to-do list, then it gives me the option to select which jobs that I want, and then I hit save to-do list. And now that puts it in my list, and so that's all I have is just those 3 to work on. And as I complete them, as I finish them, it kicks it out of the to-do list. So if you had, you knew you were doing these 20 jobs and you already loaded your shape files in there, you could have it in your to-do list and just focus on that. And so when you finish that list, that you're not going to miss anything. So that's what the to-do list is meant for. No, right now they're just arranged in the order they were saved in the system or in the iPad.
Yeah, and that is on our list is to let you reorder things, the way you want it. So it's just, you have preferred, you can move to the top. We just haven't.
Yeah,
done that yet.
and I'll mention too. You heard us say our list a bunch of times. So we have 500 plus things on our list, and then we have our short list, and then we have our shorter list. So we have stuff that we're working on right in front of us, and then we have things that will get done within the next months, and then we have stuff that we have to have done by the time the season gets going in the spring. So that's why Greg talks about feedback. When we're in there in the booth, please stop by. Give us that feedback because that's what we look for. The more we hear stuff, that's the direction we're going to go. You guys lead us. We're not here to tell you how to do the job. You tell us what you need, and then we'll work on that. So we do love your feedback.
Anthony,
Yep.
one thing, do you guys have like a bug tracking list or a feature tracking list on the website or something like that, listed somewhere that people can see what?
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. So every time we have a software release, we send out an email. So any of the APX emails, the AgPilotX.com emails that come with the system, all those get it. So if you have that on there, just be sure to check that. It's going to give you an update of what, a list of changes, whether they were bug fixes or new features. It'll list all that in that email. If you don't use that email and you just want it sent to your personal email, you can go to our website and just type, there's a little button to join the newsletter is what it's called. And that's what that newsletter is just our list of updates. So you go in there, type in your email, and it'll save it on there. And then you can get that on our website as well. So if you just go to AgPilotX.com, under documentation, there's a little button that says software releases, and it'll go back for everything we've had since the system came out. So you can find your version number that you're running and find out if there's an update. And we didn't really talk about it yet. There's another slide on it, but all the updates come over the air. So if you don't know yet, all the updates are sent directly to the light bar and the hub. So we communicate with that directly. Once we've sent, once we've tested the firmware, and we have several beta testers that we use, and we can send the firmware directly to them. Once all these features are signed off and we know they're working well, then we'll go ahead and blast that out to everybody. So if you've ever got in and you hit, on this screen here, you connect to your light bar, where it says connected there, right underneath it'll say tap to update. And so you just tap it, and it'll download the update and go ahead and update your light bar and your hub, without you having to worry about a USB or email or anything. It just does it. And then the third part, or the other part of that too that I want to mention that gets forgotten a lot is the app. So the app doesn't do it automatically. You do have to go to the App Store and download that app. So you may update your version, your light bar and a hub to the newest one, but you may not be able to leverage those features if you don't have the newest app that goes with it, because you won't have those selections, the ability to select the new features. So just keep that in mind. Make sure you keep the app updated as well. We typically will do all the updates at the same time. So if you see one for the light bar, just go check the App Store. There's a good chance there's probably a new app to go with it. Anything else?
Nope.
Yeah, I know we're getting.
Yeah, and we encourage you guys, come out, come to the booth. If you want to go through that, the app, we'd love to go through it with you. And like I said, download it so you guys have it as well. You can look at it, look through it. The iPhone app is a little abbreviated. It's fully functional, but it's a little abbreviated. It's not as thorough as the iPad app for obvious reasons, just because of space considerations. And that's one thing I didn't talk too much about, but you can run our stuff side by side with other apps. Like if you wanted to run ForeFlight, and I know we get lots of questions on ADS-B, and you can go buy a $500 ADS-B receiver, run ForeFlight, put the iPad on it, and put if you wanted to put ForeFlight, and ForeFlight actually does a side by side app now. They didn't for the longest time. They do. You could run, AgPilotX app and ForeFlight app side by side if you ever wanted to. And again, just leveraging the great things that are out there.
Yeah.
What's that?
Split screen?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Split screen them. Yep. We'll get on to, I do want to give a chance to a couple of our partners to talk, but we were getting into like shapefile transfers, so we're doing more with partners. We'll start by talking about some of the things that we're doing, moving data, right? Because there's lots of great companies out there that are doing cool things, and we can't do everything. And one thing we probably will never go down the path is an advanced job creation, file sorting, file management, data analysis system, right? We'll have AgHippo, and it'll be more the rudimentary stuff, the basics. But there's great companies out there like ChemMan, like AgSync, and I do want to talk a little bit about them and how we're working together. We're working now with doing some things with ChemMan, bringing data in from them, and so we're trying to do more and more. We're working with AgSync. I'll probably turn it over right now, if I can, to Helen. Helen is with Raven AgSync, and she's just going to say a word or two about our collaboration that we've had in this past year. So it's more about you create something in AgSync, bring it across into AgPilotX, and we're doing more and more what Anthony called our API, right? And our API is our cloud communication. So it just means we bring data across to our AgHippo, and so it can bring it right down to AgPilotX. And this is just a picture.
Hi, I'm Helen with Raven. Most of you are probably more familiar with the AgSync name, as that's where we got our start in the aerial industry. We were acquired by Raven 3 years ago, largely because they wanted to do sort of what Greg and Anthony are doing here with their field computer. So they essentially have ground field computers as well as some other things that are in the cab today. And one of the first things they developed is what we call the connected workflow. So what we do with that is we send our orders from AgSync out to our field computer. The person in the spreader or sprayer starts the job, completes that, and then sends that information back into AgSync. So we call that a connected workflow. It saves a lot of time. It prevents error because you got your guy, he knows he's in the right field, he knows he's spraying exactly what he's supposed to be spraying, and then he sends that information back. So I don't know if many of you, what we've discovered in the ground as well as aerial industry is that people are requiring that flight path information, not so much exactly where but they want to know that you sprayed that field, and a lot of people require that in order to pay for that. But what that does is it gives an extra burden to you as an applicator to provide that information. So what AgPilotX is doing, what our connected workflow is doing, is sending that back automatically. So when you create a job in AgSync, you send it to your AgPilotX, you're going to pull that job up, you're going to start it, you're going to complete it, and all of that data is going to seamlessly flow back into your AgSync. Then you're going to be able to provide reports and information to your customer with all of that intact. So huge time saver. I've told Greg before, like, you can almost save a person, right? For those of you that are in the back office that are having to upload all of that information and not having to grab it off of a USB stick and being able to do that automatically, huge time saver. If you don't, sometimes you have to hire part-time people so that they can do that, so that you can get billed faster. So sometimes you can almost save a person, or at the very least you can really help your back office not be so stressed in the middle of busy season. So we have a booth here as well. Like working with AgPilotX, so feel free to stop by and talk to us.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you. And and just the short of the long is really, all these things. We'll talk a little bit more about things that came from the Verifly side. Dave Eby's here. He'll talk a little bit about some of the things that we're working on with AgPilotX and really how AgSync plays into all that. But the whole idea is, reduce the number of steps, reduce the time. How can we do all these things and automate them, right? Create the work order from the office, get it down to that AgPilotX, so it just appears for the pilot to do it. The pilot does his job, the data rolls back. No button pushes, no human intervention, right? Just create it here, it appears for the pilot. The pilot does his job, it comes right back, and it just appears at the AgSync platform, ready to go, ready to be billed, and nobody's got to go out and retrieve anything, nobody's got to do anything. So, of course, Dave invented the Verifly system probably 10 years ago now?
Yeah, it's close to 10 years.
Yeah, close to 10 years ago now, and that was the central theme of that system, was integrating with AgSync and bringing data back and forth, making your life easier and manageable.
The connected workflow is very important. This past year, we doubled our acres. Think about that. If you doubled your acres, and what we're able to do is we can complete the jobs every night. We had everything done as far as dealers knew what was done. They knew what time it was done. It was what day it was done, what the weather conditions were. They had that information available immediately. And that's how this works. Now we use primarily the Verifly yet because PilotX is not quite where it's going to be, but it's on its way. And when you get there, you'll be able to do the same thing. So what we did, and you'll be able to probably download it. Anthony, you'll probably put it on your website or something. We made up a workflow of how the PilotX works, and we had Will Souther. He's here somewhere. He did a discussion of how he handles the PilotX using AgSync. So how you complete the workflow on your computer, all the steps it goes through, it's on an Excel sheet. So he'll put that up on the website. You can look at that if you're using PilotX and if you're using AgSync, how to make it work. But it's important to have this information here. We have farmers that before we're done, they're already calling and say, hey, we know you're out there flying, because when we complete the field, it sends a text message to the farmer letting him know it's done. So he knows it's done, And he can go online and he looks, and we have dealers go on there every day and make sure we get all the fields done, make sure nothing's missing, make sure all the data's there. So people are doing this now, and it's going to become more important in the future when these chemicals get more expensive. When you're spending $30, $40 an acre for fungicides, you want to make sure it goes the right place. So anyways, you have any questions? You want to?
Maybe just talk about, like you were talking to me about your workload this year versus last year,
Yeah.
and how it just, without something like this.
We could not get it done the old way without using AgSync, because we process all the information ahead of time. Pilots know exactly where they're going. They're going in there. Think about what you do as a dealer or a applicator. You want the pilot in the right field. And let me tell you, that's a bigger issue than what you realize. The first year we started fungicides, we had a surprise. We got to looking at the maps, and some pilots were not within 2 miles of the field, spraying in other fields. And that got a little scary real quick and expensive. So you got to get the pilots in the right field. The farmer wants to know it's done right. He wants to know the application is done correctly. He wants to know the swath widths are there. He wants to know what time it was done, what the weather conditions were. Because he tracks this data, on AgSync we can use a system where you can get the shape files automatically. The farmer can go in, he can pick out his field, he can download the shape files, you can see exactly what's going on. So if you're using a combine to compare yield data, it's available immediately. So we don't have to do it anymore, because when we first started doing this was using Satellox, and no disrespect, Greg, but you had to download all the files, and some of the files downloaded, you would not get the whole thing, you'd get part of it. So you had to piece these together. I don't know if you tried it already, but it's a mess. Keeping track of all that data, it's basically impossible. It was kind of like an all-winter project for these farmers. So with AgSync, we made that all automatic, and it's great. We use it every day. I mean, we could not exist without AgSync. And so anything else? And PilotX has come a long ways, and that's why we're working with Greg. We want a company to work with in the future who's going to be there, who's going to have engineers, and going to have the product, and keep it running. And he promised me one thing he's missing, the GPS on the fly, which means keeping track of where the airplane's at as it moves around the area, so you're in the right field. So when you complete the field, you complete the right one. Right now it does it one at a time, which is, they did some work on it where it's multiple field completion, but it's not quite where it's needed to be. But he promised me he'd have it by March, right, Greg?
It's gonna be our best effort.
So, you guys heard me?
It's gonna be our best effort to do that.
Okay. Thanks, Greg.
Yeah. Thank you, Dave. And yeah, it's a little bit about the geo-referencing on the fly, right? So you can actually, if you're in a polygon, you can identify that you don't have to say, I'm in this polygon. Because right now we say, if you got a shape file, you got to tell us, I'm in this polygon. And automatic geo-referencing is, I start spraying and I know I'm in this polygon because I'm in this polygon. So that's the automatic geo-referencing part that is the last piece that we're bringing to make it a more complete product and to do the things that Verify did, which was very compelling and difficult to do. So we're in the process of doing that. And I do want to turn it over to ChemMan and talk a little bit about our relationship there. We had some additions this past year. We're continuing to add some things. ChemMan's a fabulous program, and feeding data across to us and getting data back and forth.
Okay. Hello, I'm Regina with ChemMan, and I'm so happy to be here. If anyone knows me, I love workflow, helping with workflow. I've told millions of people that a lot of women love shoes, jewelry, but I love workflow. It's crazy, but I love helping people with workflow. And years ago, I remember talking to Anthony. I think it's when he was still with the satellite company. We were walking down the hallway, and I said, wouldn't it be great if we could just sync our systems together? I wish y'all could think about that. And I knew he had it in the back of his head. He couldn't tell me at the time, but they were coming out with something. And so anyway, later he mentioned to me, Regina, we are going to be coming out with something that can sync your data together wirelessly. I had seen on the crop duster sites, and why are we still using thumb drives? It's so clunky, it's crazy, So I was so excited when they came out with this system. I was one of the big proponents. I remember going to convention taking a little video and saying, look what AgPilotX is going to be doing. And I think I got like 4,000 views. It was just so amazing. And I was so excited about it. So anyway, I can relate to what they're saying. Development can be slow, especially when you move some priorities up. And one of our priorities are syncing with AgPilotX. I hired another developer to solely work on APIs. He's a professional API developer. And we've been working on it for several months. And we're hoping to have testing mode probably in a couple of weeks. And so we're hoping for a January release. It's looking really well. I'm very excited about it. Currently with our AgPilotX, you can put KimMan on your iPad, hit a button, and it opens it into the AgPilotX. And then when you're done, you email your applied log data back, and then you have to go to your email and then upload it and match it to your job. But in the new system that I'm very excited about is you can hit a button in the KimMan, and it'll automatically transfer it, and you'll see it in your job queue. And then as you come back into the system, it will automatically bring all of your data back. I mean, you won't have to do anything. It'll automatically bring your information, your swath width, your applied data, and just automatically sync it with KimMan. So there's no more clunky emailing or uploading or matching or anything. It automatically, even if you do a partial job, you'll be able to see what you've already done. So that's what we're very excited about. Eventually, right now you have to click on the add applied info to put the pilot, all that information to say the weather data. We have a weather app too, but we're hoping to bring even more information on version 2. But that's something I'm very excited about. As we mentioned, there's a lot of to-do lists. We have a lot of people, I think we're at 2,000. We're celebrating our 30th anniversary next year. I'm very excited about that. And congratulations on the 100th anniversary of the Ag Pilots. I'm very excited about that too. But anyway, we've been around a while. 7 years ago, we went online, and my customers that have switched to AgPilotX tell me they absolutely love it. So Anthony is so good to come wherever I go. I teach classes at different locations. He said, I'll be there. We'll be in the middle of Mississippi and nowhere. We may have 5 people. We may have 100 people, but he's always there to be there. So wonderful support, from them as well. So I just wanted to thank them for offering our industry something to be wireless, and I'm very excited about it. And I appreciate all that y'all do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Regina. And we're running short on time. I did want to give Troy a chance to speak as well. So we're going to jump ahead a little bit. I do want to get a chance to talk a little bit about Ag Hippo, but we're going to be spilling over. And Troy is here at the show with he's got a booth here with the Reby Gate. And so, we're working with the Reby Gate now. We're getting into variable rate, bringing data across. So I did want to let Troy talk to that, and we've got a demo system here working with an AgPilotX and showing the Reby Gate working with variable rate.
We'll see how it goes with these guys upstairs. Anyways, this past year we were able to go through, and since last year's show, we got auto on off working with the AgPilotX off of shapefiles. And then we're also able, just this past month, to start getting some test firmware going to be able to do variable rate applications with the AgPilotX. So we do have that set up at our booth. And if anyone during the show, anyone wants to come through and see how you set up the smart gate to run the variable rate. Again, the file transfer, everything else like that, I would refer you back to those guys, because I asked for help to get through it, and once it's working, I'm good. So, anyways, that's your back.
Appreciate that. So and that's one thing that we've added. In previous years, we just started moving our flow control to the automatic on-off. That was something that they added. What in the world is that? So now we're getting into that variable rate portion of it, right? So now this will be the first year where we really release that, and the Reby Gate is actually our first foray into the variable rate side. So automatic on-off was released early in 2021. and now 2022 will have the variable rate portion. So we will be doing other things. We're starting with the dry variable rate with the Reby gate. We'll be working with air repair gate as well, and we're going to get into some of the liquid variable rate as well. So that'll all follow in sequence. Any questions on any of that? No. We've talked about it. We're encouraged with working with Vondran, and we want to. And is Dave still here? Yeah, we're just not making a lot of progress, but we're very willing and want to do that.
Work with who?
Vondran gate. Yeah, it's just a different dry gate, but just an alternative. So yeah, I did want to get a chance. We do. Anybody that knows AgOpti, we actually did some great things with them just recently because, talking about our API. So the API is just our cloud communication to everybody else, right? It's just an API is just your communication. You have a standard communication. It's just a kind of a standardization to say, hey, we're going to output our information like this. It's public. Anybody can know this, and if you want to receive this data, you can receive it. And if you want to send us data, you make it this standard way, and then we'll receive it into our platform and have it there. So AgOpti has done some things with us now, so where they're sending data across, where it can come directly into the AgPilotX. So you can create it in their software, push it through to AgPilotX. I did want to talk about AgHippo Live, so some of the things that we're adding this year. So AgHippo Live is just our place to view logs, right? So that's what it's been to date, but it's also a live tracking site. So in our ground business, we've had tracking now for 4 or 5 years that we've been doing live tracking, which means we track the Apple product. So when you log into our site, we're streaming all the data up to the cloud, so in real time. So if you want to turn that on and log in, you can stream that GPS data to the cloud. So that just means I can go into aghippo.com, log in, and from anywhere in the world, and I can see that data. It sounds like they're competing with me. So I get louder, they get louder. But it's just a great way to monitor what's going on in the field. You get that real-time data. Multiple aircraft can log in. So whoever, it's just a login. So if you had 10 different AgPilotXs and you log them all into the same account, then you go into aghippo.com, from my phone or from my truck or from wherever, from my office, I can see those 10 systems that are logged in under that account. If you wanted, 5 here and 5 there, you just have 2 accounts. So you can see all that real-time data. Now you do have to activate it from the iPad to say, okay, I authorize this data to be relayed to the cloud and I want it streamed so somebody can view it. And that's what really turns you on to have all your live data. That also is what is instrumental in relaying data to our partners as well. Because when we have partners like AgSync, like ChemMan, we can stream our data not only to us, but we can stream it to them. And that's how, of course, we get that instantaneous data back to them. Because when we're done, we just say the pilot says finish, just because we want the pilot to say, okay, I'm done with this and I want it to go back to AgSync. And so when they press finish, it pushes that data from our cloud, because it's sitting there all the time, because it's streaming there in real time, and pushes it across to them, to whoever our partners are, whoever you want to get that information, and is our API partner. So it just pushes it to them, so that way, once you're signed in, there's no button pushes, that data just streams across, you're done, it goes to them, billing's ready, right? So it just makes it very simple. We're adding features like ETAs. So if you wanted your ground crew to be sitting there and have a big screen up that was telling them where the airplanes were and how far away they were, they'll be able to press a home button as they're flying back. The ground crew can see, hey, I'm 4 minutes out, 4 minutes and 32 seconds out, and they're going to be on the ground. So that way, it's just a good way of communication that's instant, that ground crews can see and know exactly what's going on. So it's and we'll be adding little features like that to the real-time tracking, just that makes sense. Any questions or comments on that?
How about this? Can you, right now on AgPilotX, can someone in the office go in there and pull those logs down?
Yeah, yep. So yeah, in fact, all the work we've done with AgSync, all that data is being reported to our cloud. So if you actually go into AgHippo, all that data is recorded there. So you can go in and look at the calendar and say, hey, give me all the data from last week, and it'll just show all that data.
Like log files, something like we were saying earlier, at the end of the day, I just sit there and email off the log files and then save them to the computer and then upload them to get to
Yeah, you don't have to do any of that, right? Because it's all there. So that's the one. I mean, that's the one thing that people in our ground business that we run tracking love the most, right? They're like, I don't have to upload a log ever again. They said that's the thing we want, right? You just, you go in there, and, if that tracking is turned on, then when I come in tomorrow, if I don't shut it off, it's on there forever, right? So you don't have to push a button, you turn it on, it starts streaming data to the cloud. And that data's in the cloud, I can go look at it, and it shows everything that I did. So really, it's not even about logs anymore, although you can search by job, and that'll show you the logs, or you can search by date. All that data's in the cloud. You don't have to press a button to get it there. So yeah, that's probably the biggest benefit of that.
And we'll have tomorrow we'll have a demo set up with AgHippo Live, so you can see some of the tracking features, kind of how it's laid out. There's still some work to be done on it, but we'll have something to show at the booth tomorrow. And yeah, we got to get wrapping things up. Is there any other questions? I jumped ahead of things. I had to skip a few things, but we talked about all the important stuff. And like I said, and Anthony said, please stop by. I want to thank the guys that came out and spoke with us, our partners. We're going to be doing more of that. If there's certain things you guys want to see us do, if you think other people should be our partners and you want them to do things with us, tell them, or tell us who we should be working with and what we should be doing in particular with some of these guys. So you guys let us know, what you want to see. Any other questions or comments or feedback?
I had a question earlier about the app. I was wondering if you guys can have a way, I don't assign shape files to at least half of my jobs that I'm doing, whether there are leaking sprays or something, but I was wondering if there's, and some of them are also waste related. Is there a way you could touch your job and actually navigate to the job because it doesn't have shape files?
The field? Yeah, so that was that drop pin feature that Anthony was showing. That's brand new.
You just have to zoom in and effectively just
Yep. You can zoom in anywhere you want.
you
And
can't go from the job file just on the drop down guide to or something.
how would you know if there's a shape file? You can, but how would you know if you didn't have a shape file with it? You're saying with no shape
Well,
file.
you already had a pattern started or something. I don't know. We spray pasture and spray in the fall, and some of them, have 2 or 3 winds. So that's there, and then you finally get a wind and you have a bunch around, and so I don't know.
You got to have a coordinate, right? So we got to know a coordinate. I mean, so you can either press the screen or enter a coordinate or a shape file. So somehow we got to know where that job file is.
Like, if they can remember, like, the end of your last swatch, like that would be a good, you go to it and take you to right where you last there.
Well, yeah. So you can go back to any job, right? So if you've already started it, you just hit resume, and you go right back to the end of where you left off.
But there's no guidance to that, say, like,
It just gives you guidance to the
Right. So guidance to the field instead of guidance on the swath. So yeah, that is on our to-do list, is to say resume and get guidance to the field. Like a mark return. So yeah.
I don't know if you have an auto zoom or anything like that, where it'll kind of zoom out the same picture, and then as you get closer, it'll kind of auto zoom back in here.
Yeah, I mean there is auto zoom functions, but not with that because we're not guiding to the field. But that is, that's on the to-do list, and that's been one that's been brought up to us a handful of times here lately. So that one's got to climb up our priority list for sure. Guidance to the field instead of resuming on the swath. Resume, get your guidance to the field, and then when you get there, switch it over to the swath guidance. Yep, that is one that we've got to add. Not yet, but what like sharing data between airplanes and tandem flying, or even taking somebody else's job over. So that's really where AgHippo comes in, because all that data is streamed to the cloud. So what the eventual visual you'll get is, if I got two airplanes and they're both logged into the same account, they're both streaming that data up to the cloud, and then my view of the jobs is actually going to be downloading my jobs and the other aircraft's jobs. So I could see what they're doing, and I say, oh, well, I want to resume that job. Instead of, you'll have your list, then you'll have anybody else that's in that account. Like if you had 10 airplanes, you'd have 10 lists. And you just click on their stuff, and then you say, okay, I want that one, I'm going to resume that job. And so you can take over their stuff. So everything's going to be held in the cloud. As long as I'm streaming that data to the cloud, I can see anybody who's in my account. So yeah, that's the idea, is to share AB lines, share job files, share data. Thanks, man.
What about for using an auto pattern for the volume 08? You have like a left racetrack using the auto volley labels. It won't roll in the volley that's like a right racetrack.
More patterns in the auto pattern?
Or just have it set up so it doesn't pattern, because if you have it.
So it automatically knows left or right.
Knows the direction, so yeah, saying left or right. Yeah, there's a handful of things we need to add to that auto pattern, and so we're just starting to do that with Quick Track X and some other stuff, and the repeat pattern. So yes, we're going to get to checking off some things. We're just doing the basics now, but all those more in-depth things that we can do with auto patterns is all part of our list, to-do list. Anything else? All right, thank you guys for coming out. Appreciate you. Yeah.
Our session's cold. That first session, I had an air blowing. I was freezing.
Oh, God, I don't know how you did it. I was shivering. I thought people are going to look at me and think I'm like nervous because I was just shaking. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks, Troy.
I didn't think I was that nervous.
Yeah. Yeah, you're in short sleeves. It was tough in long sleeves. Hey, how are you?
Hello, I am from Argentina, so my English is not very good. But
My Spanish is worse.
I would like to have a card from some of you, because I have been working like 150 hours with the system.
Okay.
And I found some things that maybe you should work on.
Right, okay.
Some things about patterns and another thing. So I would like to have an email to send you the comment.
Now you're running an AgPilotX in Argentina?
No, it's here.
Oh. So I was going to say, I didn't think we had any down there, but we're just getting down to Brazil. He's going next week. And we just put our first 2 or 3 systems down there, and we got to get to Argentina. We need help getting down there.
I am flying here in the summer. And when it is winter here, I'm going to summer in Argentina.
Okay. Yeah, we need some good contacts because it's been a long time. I used to, for Satlock, I've been down to Argentina many times. Since then, I haven't been down since I left there 6 years ago. So
I know everyone in.
Okay. Yes. Thank you. I appreciate that. Hey, Anthony.
Next winter you're going to.
You got a card?
Yeah, when you go to the
I'll give him one of my cards. But
the idea is working.
he's from Argentina. He's running an AgPilotX here.
Where'd y'all find that? You don't mind?
Well, it's got plugs. It's just not hot.